And this one is a cooperative campaign game that is based on the comic with the same name. The story offered in this campaign does take place in the same universe as the comics, but it is going to be offering its own brand new story that you're not going to be able to find anywhere else. There's also going to be some different decision points and branching paths depending on the successes and failures of the players, as well as any associated consequences. And I really do like what I'm seeing with this one because it does look very different from other games in this genre. Because first of all, players will have a hand of action cards, but they're not just some set hand of cards. Instead, you're going to be drawing them from a deck each and every round, which means that you're going to have very different actions from round to round, and also you could have multiple of the same action just depending on how you draw. Something else that makes this game very different from basically every other co-op game that I've ever seen is that players aren't actually assigned to any particular character in this game. Instead, when it's your turn, you get to choose an action card from your hand and then decide which character you want to apply that action to. These actions can allow that character to move around on the board, interact with different points of interest, or use various items or abilities, or even jump into battle with different enemies that you might encounter. There is also an action card that allows you to repeat an action that character has already performed, and there is also an action card that allows you to get rid of fatigue cards. And the way that the fatigue cards work is that at the start of your turn, you can optionally draw 5 cards into your hand and then discard 5 cards, which is essentially giving you more flexibility and options to choose from. But anytime you do that, you do have to assign a fatigue card to one of the characters. And that card's going to limit the amount of actions that character can take each round. And it's also going to be persisting between rounds unless you're able to get rid of it. But I really do like what I'm seeing with the system here because I think it does introduce a lot of unique elements into the co-op experience, because in this game, even though you're more focused on managing your own hand of cards rather than focusing on a single particular character, you can only actually play one card on your turn, which means that you're going to have to work with the other players to try and get the most out of all the different characters and try to get each individual character to do what you collectively want that character to do. Not only that, but it also opens up the opportunity for the game to introduce new characters or take characters away as you're playing through even a single scenario, since the amount of characters doesn't actually have to match the amount of players in order for the system to work. And one other thing to note here is that anytime that you play an action card, you're going to be putting it onto that character's board. And anytime that a single character has 4 action cards on their board, that's going to be triggering the end of that round, which is then going to be pulling this time token closer to 0. And if players aren't able to achieve the goals of the scenario before that time token reaches the end, then the players are going to be losing that scenario. But if you haven't completely run out of time yet, anytime that time token moves, you're also going to be discarding all the cards from each of the character boards, except for those fatigue cards, which, like I said, do persist between rounds unless you're able to get rid of them. And all of these points of interest and items that you're going to be collecting are all going to have different IDs associated with them. What's cool about this is that if you get different items that you think you could mix together, or if you think you can use a particular item in a certain point of interest, you can actually combine those IDs together and then look them up in the campaign booklet to see if there's any resulting effect or event, or if you are able to combine them into a brand new item that you could then go and combine again, potentially with something else. This just opens up so many possibilities and puzzles for players to solve, and I think it's just such a fun and satisfying mechanism when you do figure out which things work well together, and you discover different ways to interact with different points of interest and potentially even get different results. But if you want to learn even more about this one, you can definitely go ahead and check out its campaign, and I will have that linked in the description down below.